Hey guys, welcome to How to Be Fancy. I'm Heather, and clearly today we are going to do a little bit of a makeup look. A lot of you commented on the makeup that I wore last month on Instagram. I was wearing a turban. I'll pop it here maybe. That look was loosely based on a 1970s inspired look, so I thought I would kind of recreate that slash walk you through a little bit of the 1970s makeup all in one. Now I've already cleansed and moisturized my skin, but the 1970s was all about a dewy glow. And so what I'm going to do today, I'm going to mix some of this Flash Illuminator from the Estee Edit in with just a little pop of MAC Strobe Cream. So I'm just going to put a very thin layer of this all over the face to kind of give us an illuminated sort of base. The thing that I like about the Estee Edit product is that it doesn't have any glitter in it. And so that is fantastic when you're trying to create a glow without a lot of glitter. For foundation, keeping everything very light and dewy, I'm also going to be using my Clay Cosmetics Tinted Moisturizer. This is almost gone. I'm super sad. It is my favorite thing of life. So I'm just going to squeeze out a little bit of that. Again, the thing with the 1970s is although there was a lot happening in fashion and a lot of exaggerated styles happening, the makeup tended to be very pulled back, reserved, again, glowy and natural. Women were working a lot more in the 1970s, so this needed to be a pretty quick process, but overall everything was very much more a soft and natural look as compared to maybe some of like the earlier 70s or 60s or the more mod 60s where you had a lot of really graphic detail. Now my skin is far from perfect, so I'm going to cheat a little bit and use my Kat Von D concealer because I'm not having the best skin moment as it is right now, and the sheer coverage needs a little bit of help. So just where I've got some redness, some blemishes. So the 70s was basically the kind of culmination of a lot of different eras coming together. A lot of musically even, you see a lot of the pop music mixing in with a lot of rock. You've got heavy metal coming into play. You've got like the beginnings of punk and funk music. And so it really is just a mismatch of a lot of different eras. So you kind of have this anything goes sort of situation happening in the 1970s, which I think is kind of the appeal of it all. When I think of the 1970s, I think of just a very relaxed style. I think of a lot of fun elements, but nothing like super over the top as far as difficult to wear. You've got your fabrics, polyester and double knits are all these very comfortable stretch fabrics. I think of the 1970s as kind of the era when pants for women became like the thing. It's kind of where that all started out. So you wouldn't have really done much to the brows, just kind of brush them through with clear mascara. Mine is a little bit tinted. So although the thin natural brow was in, I'm definitely just gonna take a little bit of just eyeshadow here and just define the bottom of my eyebrow. So I'm not going to mess with any sort of filling in other than just kind of reshaping this little bottom line to give me a little bit more of a polished look, but that's about it. So when I look back at 1970s makeup, the looks that most inspire me are kind of those disco glam looks. They kind of hint back to the 30s and 40s, but they're all a more natural textured finish. We've come a long way in terms of makeup finishes from the 1930s and 40s to the 1970s. So there's a lot of play with shimmer and light and texture and dewy skin, but then there's also this underlying element of glamour that runs through everything, especially toward the late 1970s and getting right into that disco era. Cream eye makeups were a big deal in the 1970s. A lot of people used them all over the lid. Shimmer was also a big deal, so we're going to play with that quite a bit today. So I'm going to just run this all over the working part of my lid. And again, using my fingers, I'm just going to blend that out. I'm going to run some of this underneath the eye as well, but not in the waterline. I'm going to take a little Q-tip and just blend that out. Really giving that a good smudge. Not a lot of harsh edges at all in 70s makeup. So now that I've got that all blended out, I'm gonna start working with my pigments. I've got my trusty little Moon Dust palette here by Urban Decay, and I'm gonna take that and a flat brush, if I can find one here. I'm gonna take my NYX priming spray, Just dampen this brush. I've got a green color here called Galaxy. So I think I'm gonna mix it with this color here. Maybe even a little bit of that brighter green. And I am going to work this into kind of this outer portion of the eye. I'm gonna take a fluffier brush and just start blending that out. So add a little bit. Really buff it out. And then work a little bit of that just down into this little outside V. I'm really blending this color really high up onto the brow bone almost. They were not stingy with the eye area in the 70s. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the green color, it's called Light Year, on that same flat brush, and I didn't put any more water on it because I don't want this to be as strong as out here. But I'm going to almost create a bit of a halo eye. You don't think about today's trends being necessarily inspired from the 1970s, but they absolutely were. The halo eye was quite a thing in the disco era. So same thing, using that same brush because I want a little bit of that darker color to just kind of mix in with this bright green. Just going to blend that out, and I'm actually blending it up into and toward the front of my eyebrow. It seems extreme, but it kind of creates this cat-like shape just using shadow. So it's still really soft, but you're getting a little bit of that feline, fierce, kind of Cher almost eye. And of course you can't think of the 1970s without thinking of all of the crafty macrame that was happening at the time. Can't overlook any of those movements of women just getting together, talking about what mattered to them, and making good wall hanging. Sounds like a really fun time, actually. So what I've done is I've taken the shade Lithium and put that right in the middle where I had that original cream color. So we've kind of got this mix of cool and warm colors happening right now. Now I'm gonna take Urban Decay Midnight Cowboy and just continue the glitter theme by running some of that up onto my brow bone. Television, of course, was huge in the 1970s with the kind of age of the sitcom. You had things like Mary Tyler Moore, which is one of my all-time favorite shows. I loved her. Of course, I didn't watch her in the 1970s, but I watched Nick at Night, and I loved her. She was one of my all-time favorites. Mork and Mindy, Bob Newhart, tons of other 70s sitcom-y shows that I absolutely adore still today. Then you had shows like All in the Family, The Jeffersons, where really some of the first African-American families were portrayed on TV. It's a really kind of iconic time in our television history. I'm gonna run back in and bump that green up just a little bit more. I'm just putting that on directly onto, just barely tapping it into that green. Just pop that back out a little bit more. Before I finish the eyes, I want to go ahead and put on some highlighter because we've got glitter eyes. Why not highlight the rest of our face? This is the Cover FX custom cover drops. I'm gonna run a few drops of that across my fingertips and use this in a few strategic places. Of course, I'm going to put quite a bit of it just on the upper cheekbone. Then I want to take a little bit of that and pop it right in the inner corner. Just gonna take a little bit of it. And while it's still pretty tacky, I'm gonna dab it right in the center just to kind of brighten up that center area of my eye. And then really lightly tap it. And the cool thing about this eye makeup is you want it to look lived in, like you've been at like the best, sweatiest party of your life. Hence all the shimmer and the creams. If you have darker lashes, you could probably skip this step. Not a lot of eyeliner was worn during the time, but there was just a little bit to kind of accentuate the eye area. So I'm just gonna take a brown liner and not doing any sort of flick or wing or anything like that. I'm just creating a little bit of soft definition around the eye. I am gonna run it all the way down into that little inner corner. Take my Q-tip again and just softly blend that out. In my waterline, I'm just gonna put a little bit of white. This was kind of a carryover trend from the 1960s. I'm gonna curl my lashes and pop on some mascara. Now, women wore false eyelashes in the 1970s, but they weren't quite as prominent as they had been in the 50s and 60s, particularly the 60s, where like the crazier twiggy lash was definitely in, and the more layers of lashes you wore and the more mascara you had on, the better. So this is just a generous helping of mascara on top and bottom. So there are eyes essentially done. Now, what I think separates the 1970s glamorous eye from, say, the 1930s and 1920s is bronzer. No one was stingy with bronzer in the 1970s. The more color you had in your skin, the better off you were. So I'm just gonna use a big fluffy brush. Now, this is not contouring. This is simply making yourself look like you've got a wonderful goddessy sort of glow. Kind of right where the sun would hit you, across the nose especially, tops of the cheeks. I'm even gonna just kind of sweep that. If you have freckles, this is so cute for highlighting freckles, putting a little bit of bronzer right here, running it up through the temples, a little bit on the chin here. Blush hadn't quite reached its peak like it did in the 1980s, but it was still something that was widely worn, mostly in like peachier terracotta colors and or berry or rosy colors. So I'm gonna take this In-Stain blush from the Balm. It's in the shade Houndstooth. The blush trend of the 70s was basically to create an L shape on your face. So we're just going to lightly work this into an L shape here. So final thing I want to do is lips. Lips were a very natural color. A lot of times they would be during the daytime either just natural lips with a little bit of shimmery gloss, or they would be a brown tone color. I'm going to actually use this little brown tone sample that I have from Besame. It's 1970. I think it's called Chocolate Kiss. And you can see it's kind of got that terracotta color to it. And all of the colors of the 70s, even though there was a lot of color, they were all very muted and soft and tended to kind of blend into one another really well. So I'm not really trying to define my lip shape all that much, I'm just getting this color on. I'm going to, of course, top that off with a little bit of lip gloss. Let's see what we can find. I'm gonna go in with NARS Albatross just over the top of that. I love this because it's clear with just a little bit of gold in it, which I think is perfect for the 1970s. Now, any powders that would have been worn would have been a more lightweight, opalescent kind of powder, so I'm gonna go in with the Hourglass Luminous Light, same bronzer brush because I don't want it to come off too strong, and just pop this right through the center of my face. I find this doesn't have too much glow to just kind of wear as an overall powder, especially when you've already got kind of a glowy look going on. If you're worried about, say, your T-zone, then go back in with just a loose powder. I've got my Well People one here. The sample is still going strong, guys. And just kind of touch around my nose, places that I'm not wanting to get too shiny. So here is the finished look with the glowing bronzy skin, the shimmery iridescent eye, and a very natural glossy lip. I've also done a tutorial on how to get a really fun 70s look. When those go live, I will leave a link down in the description below. If you like this video and want to see more like it, make sure that you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you need more How to Be Fancy, you can find me on Instagram and Snapchat. I'm at How to Be Fancy absolutely everywhere. That's it for me for today, guys. I will see you next time. I love ya. Bye-bye.